The wind howls across a desolate shore, carrying the scent of salt and blood. Waves crash against jagged rocks, and in the distance the silhouette of a Viking longship emerges from the mist, its dragon-headed prow slicing through the fog like a predator stalking prey. This is the world of Ivar the Boneless, a name that struck terror into the hearts of kings and monks alike. A man whose very existence defied the odds, whose cunning reshaped the fate of nations. Picture a Viking camp at dusk, the air thick with the smoke of burning wood. Warriors sharpen their axes, their laughter mingling with the clink of steel, but all eyes turn to one figure, a man who does not walk, but commands the scene with a gaze that pierces like a spear. Ivar, the son of Ragnar Lothbrok, was no ordinary Viking. Born with a condition that left his legs brittle, some say he was carried into battle on a shield, his body frail but his mind a fortress of ruthless ambition. Let's step into the year 865 AD, where the Great Heathen Army, a coalition of Norse warriors, descends upon England. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms tremble, their wooden palisades no match for the storm about to break. Imagine a monk in a candle-lit scriptorium, his quill trembling as he writes of the pagan horde. He whispers prayers, but deep down, he knows God's protection may not be enough against the one they call boneless. Ivar's disability was no weakness. It was his crucible. Unable to rely on physical strength, he honed a mind sharper than any blade, a strategist who saw battlefields as chessboards and men as pawns. His brothers Bjorn, Ubbe, Hvitserk were warriors of legend, but Ivar was different. Where they swung axes, he wove plans, each move calculated to exploit the enemy's fears. Picture him now, reclining on furs in a tent, his piercing blue eyes scanning a crude map of East Anglia. His voice, low and deliberate, cuts through the murmurs of his war council. We don't fight their armies. We break their spirits. This was Ivar's genius psychological warfare. He didn't just want victory. He wanted his enemies to crumble from within, paralyzed by dread. Let's travel to the banks of the River Stour, where the Anglo-Saxon king Edmund prepares to face the Viking onslaught. His men stand in a shield wall, their breath visible in the cold dawn air, their prayers drowned out by the distant thrum of war drums. From a hilltop, Ivar watches, his lips curling into a half-smile. He knows Edmund's men are weary, their morale frayed by tales of Viking savagery, tales Ivar himself spread through captured spies. Burn their villages, Ivar had ordered days before. Leave one survivor to tell the tale. The psychological blow was devastating, sowing panic that weakened Edmund's resolve before the first arrow flew. Now, visualize the battle unfolding. Viking longships glide silently up the river, their oars dipping in perfect rhythm. The Saxons expect a frontal assault, but Ivar's plan is far cunninger. He sends a small force to feign a retreat, luring Edmund's men from their fortified position. The Saxons charge, believing victory is near, only to find themselves flanked by Ivar's hidden reserves, emerging from the morning mist like wraiths. Screams fill the air as axes meet flesh. Ivar, carried on a platform by his loyal warriors, surveys the chaos, his expression unreadable. To him, this is not battle, it's art. Edmund's army collapses, and the king himself is captured. The monk from our earlier scene, now hiding in a nearby church, hears the Vikings' chants and shudders at the fate awaiting his king. Let's pause to consider the historical context. The Great Heathen Army wasn't just a raiding party. It was a calculated invasion, driven by vengeance and ambition. Ivar and his brothers sought to avenge their father, Ragnar, executed by King Aella of Northumbria. But Ivar's motives ran deeper. His condition made him an outcast in a culture that prized physical prowess, yet it fueled his desire to prove himself greater than any warrior. From the perspective of a Viking warrior, let's imagine one of Ivar's men, a grizzled veteran named Thorolf. He stands by Ivar's side, watching the slaughter, and thinks, "This man sees what we cannot." He fights with his mind, and that makes him more dangerous than any of us. Thorolf recalls Ivar's words before the battle. A wolf does not need to run to catch its prey. It waits, and the prey comes to it. This was Ivar's philosophy: patience, deception, and unrelenting focus. Now, let's shift to the aftermath of Edmund's defeat. The air is heavy with the stench of death. Ivar, still on his platform, gazes at the bound king, who kneels before him, defiant yet broken. "Mercy is for the weak," Ivar says, his voice cold as iron. The Vikings cheer, but there's a flicker of unease in Thorolf's eyes. Has Ivar's ruthlessness gone too far? History tells us Edmund was martyred, possibly subjected to the brutal blood eagle ritual, though accounts vary. What's certain is that Ivar's victory sent shockwaves through England, cementing his reputation as a harbinger of doom. Let's reflect on Ivar's tactics. He exploited the Saxons' rigid formations, using mobility and surprise to outmaneuver them. His feigned retreats and ambushes were textbook guerrilla warfare, centuries before the term existed. But it was his psychological edge that set him apart. By spreading terror, he ensured half the battle was won before his men even drew their swords. Now, imagine a Saxon survivor, a young boy named Ethelred, hiding in the reeds by the river. He watches Ivar's men celebrate, their laughter haunting his nightmares. "The boneless one," he whispers, vowing revenge. This boy's perspective mirrors the fear Ivar instilled across England. To the Saxons, he was a demon, a cripple who defied nature itself to bring ruin upon their land. Let's move forward to York, 866 AD, where Ivar's ambitions reach new heights. The city, a jewel of Northumbria, is ripe for the taking, and Ivar has a score to settle with King Aella. Picture the city's walls looming under a stormy sky. Torches flicker as the Vikings encircle the city, their war cries echoing like thunder. Ivar, carried through the camp, inspects his siege engines, catapults, and battering rams crafted under his precise instructions. Aella, inside the city, paces his hall, his advisors urging surrender. "We cannot fight a ghost," one says, referring to Ivar's elusive tactics, but Aella refuses, clinging to pride. From Ivar's perspective, this is personal. Aella's execution of Ragnar is a wound that festers, and York will be the stage for his vengeance. Let's imagine Ivar's thoughts as he plans the siege. Aella thinks his walls will save him, but stone crumbles when hearts fail. "I will make him beg before the end." The siege begins with a barrage of fire and stone. Viking catapults hurl flaming projectiles, setting York's wooden roofs ablaze. The defenders falter as Ivar's men scale the walls under cover of darkness. Inside the city, panic spreads. A priest, clutching a cross, prays for deliverance, but the Viking war horns drown out his words. To him, Ivar is the Antichrist, a scourge sent to punish their sins. Now, visualize the climax. Aella, cornered in his hall, faces Ivar. The Viking leader, propped on his shield, stares down his father's killer. "You took my father," Ivar says, his voice a venomous hiss. "Now I take everything." The sagas claim Aella suffered the blood eagle, his ribs carved open in a grotesque ritual. Whether true or exaggerated, The story amplified Ivar's legend, ensuring his name would echo through history. Let's step back to analyze Ivar's psychology. His ruthlessness was born of necessity. A man who could not fight like others had to dominate in other ways. His disability shaped a mind that thrived on control, turning weakness into a weapon. Yet, there's a tragedy in Ivar. His need to prove himself drove him to extremes, alienating even his brothers. Was he a genius or a monster? Perhaps both. As the flames of York die down, Ivar surveys his conquest. The city is his, but the cost is steep, thousands dead, and his own men whisper of his cruelty. Thorolf, our Viking warrior, wonders, will the gods judge him for this? The monk from earlier, now a prisoner, writes in his chronicle, Ivar the Boneless, a man without mercy, has brought God's wrath upon us. His words will outlive him, shaping Ivar's legacy. This victory marks a turning point, but Ivar's story is far from over. His ambitions will carry him to new battlefields, where his cunning will face greater tests. As the sun sets over York, casting long shadows across the blood-soaked earth, we leave Ivar for now, his eyes fixed on the horizon, plotting his next move. But the saga of the Boneless One is vast, and his shadow looms larger still. Let's journey deeper into his conquests, where betrayal, brilliance, and bloodshed await. The sea roars like a living beast, its waves clawing at the hull of a Viking longship. The sky above is a churning gray, lightning splitting the heavens, as if the gods themselves watch the journey unfold. We return to Ivar the Boneless, the man whose name is now a curse whispered in the halls of Anglo-Saxon kings. Fresh from his triumph in York, he sets his sights on a new prize. Ireland, the Emerald Isle where power is forged in blood and betrayal. Picture the deck of Ivar's ship, slick with spray, as he grips the rail, his frail legs braced against a wooden frame. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scan the horizon, where the jagged coast of Ireland looms like a challenge. It is 867 AD, and the Viking world is shifting. Ivar, no longer just a warlord, dreams of a legacy that will outlive him, a kingdom to call his own. Imagine a young Irish monk, Brother Cillian, standing on a cliff overlooking the sea. His heart pounds as he spots the dragon-headed ships, their sails black against the storm. "The heathens come," he whispers, clutching his cross. Ivar's arrival in Ireland is no mere raid. Dublin, a burgeoning trade hub, is his target, a city where Norse, Irish, and rival Viking factions vie for control. Let's step into Ivar's mind as the ships near the shore. York was vengeance, he thinks, his jaw tightening. Dublin will be my crown. The longships beach on a rocky shore, their keels grinding against stone. Viking warriors leap into the shallows, their shields gleaming, but Ivar remains aboard, carried by his loyal men, his presence commanding silence. From the perspective of a Viking rower, a woman named Astrid, Ivar is both awe-inspiring and unsettling. He sees paths we cannot, she thinks, watching him survey the land. But his hunger for power, it consumes him. Astrid recalls Ivar's words before the voyage. In Ireland, we do not just fight, we build. This is Ivar's vision, a Viking stronghold that will rival the greatest cities of the north. Now, visualize Dublin's muddy streets, where Irish chieftains and Norse settlers barter and bicker. The air hums with tension, the scent of peat smoke mingling with the tang of iron. Ivar's arrival sends ripples through the city. Local leaders, wary of his reputation, agree to a parley, hoping to avoid the slaughter that followed him in England. Picture a torchlit hall, its walls draped with furs. Ivar, propped on a high seat, faces a grizzled Irish chieftain, Cormac, whose eyes narrow with distrust. The room is a powder keg, every word a spark. "Join me," Ivar says, his voice smooth as silk, "and Dublin will be a beacon of wealth." Cormac hesitates, sensing the threat beneath the offer. Ally or perish. Let's pause for historical context. Dublin in the 9th century was a melting pot, a Norse-Irish settlement strategic for trade and conquest. Ivar saw its potential as a power base, a hub to dominate the Irish Sea. But Ivar's diplomacy is a facade. Behind his promises lies a web of schemes, each designed to pit his enemies against one another. Imagine Brother Cillian, now in Dublin's monastery, scribbling in his chronicle. "The Boneless One speaks of peace, Armus," he writes, but his eyes betray a serpent's intent. Ivar's first move is subtle. He spreads rumors of a rival Norse leader, Olaf the White, plotting to seize Dublin. The Irish chieftains, already mistrustful, begin to fracture. Let's shift to a misty forest outside the city, where Ivar meets secretly with a traitor, a Norse warrior named Sigtryg, loyal to Olaf. "Betray your master," Ivar whispers, "and I'll make you rich." Sigtryg's hands tremble as he nods, knowing Ivar's promises come with a price. To him, Ivar is a devil who bends men's souls as easily as a smith bends iron. Now, picture a feast in Dublin's Great Hall, where Ivar plays the gracious guest. He raises a horn of mead, toasting Cormac's hospitality, but his smile hides a predator's intent. That night, chaos erupts. Olaf's men, misled by Sigtrygg's lies, attack an Irish outpost, believing it a preemptive strike. The clash lights the fuse Ivar intended. Visualize the battle at dawn. On a field slick with dew, Irish warriors, their faces painted with woad, clash with Olaf's Vikings, axes sparking against shields. Ivar watches from a ridge, his laughter cold as the morning air. "They destroy each other," he tells Astrid, who stands at his side, her stomach churning, "and we will claim the spoils." This is Ivar's genius: divide and conquer. By manipulating alliances, he ensures his enemies weaken themselves, leaving Dublin ripe for his grasp. Let's explore Ivar's tactics. His use of misinformation mirrors modern psychological operations, sowing discord to destabilize opponents. His patience, waiting for the perfect moment, is a hallmark of his strategic mind. But there's a cost. Astrid, watching the carnage, wonders if Ivar's soul is fraying. He wins battles, she thinks, but what does he lose? Now, imagine the aftermath. The field is strewn with bodies, Irish and Norse alike. Cormac, wounded but alive, kneels before Ivar, his pride shattered. "You've won," he rasps, blood staining his beard. Ivar's eyes gleam. "Dublin is mine," he says, his voice a blade. But the victory feels hollow, for new threats loom: rival Vikings, restless allies, and his own brothers. Let's shift to Ube, Ivar's brother, who arrives in Dublin days later. He stands on the docks, watching Ivar's men fortify the city, and feels a pang of unease. "This is not father's dream," he mutters. From Ube's perspective, Ivar's ambition has outgrown their shared vengeance. He builds a kingdom, Ube thinks, but at what price to our bond? Picture a tense confrontation in Ivar's hall. Ube, his face weathered, challenges Ivar. "You play with men's lives like pieces on a board. Where does it end?" Ivar's smile is brittle. "It ends when my name is eternal," he snaps, his voice echoing in the silent hall. Ube walks away, the rift between them widening. Let's reflect on Ivar's psychology. His paranoia is growing, fueled by his need to control every variable. His disability, once a spur to greatness, now isolates him, making trust a luxury he cannot afford. Brother Cillian, still chronicling events, writes, Ivar the Boneless rules Dublin, but he is a king of shadows, haunted by enemies real and imagined. Now, visualize Dublin under Ivar's rule. Stone walls rise, longships crowd the harbor, and markets buzz with trade. Yet, beneath the prosperity, fear festers, fear of Ivar's wrath. Imagine a young Irish boy, Finn, watching Ivar's procession through the streets. To Finn, Ivar is a myth, a cripple who topples kings. But Finn's father, a fisherman, warns, beware the man who smiles while planning your doom. Ivar's reign is marked by ruthless efficiency. He taxes the Irish heavily, but invests in defenses, turning Dublin into a fortress. His enemies, however, are not idle. Let's move to a stormy night, where a rival Viking, Halfdan, plots in a coastal stronghold. Ivar thinks Dublin is his, Halfdan growls to his men. We'll carve his heart out. Halfdan's raid comes swiftly, longships striking under cover of darkness. Dublin's bells clang as Ivar's men scramble to defend the walls, their torches flickering in the rain. Picture Ivar, carried to the ramparts, his face a mask of fury. They dare challenge me? He snarls, directing his archers with lethal precision. The battle is brutal. Waves crash against the shore as Halfdan's men scale the walls, only to be met by Ivar's traps boiling oil and hidden spikes. The attackers falter, and Ivar's counterstrike is merciless. Let's imagine Astrid, fighting in the melee, her axe slick with blood. She sees Ivar's platform, silhouetted against the flames, and thinks, he is our strength, but also our curse. Halfdan's raid fails, his body left broken on the shore. Ivar, standing over the corpse, feels no triumph, only the weight of endless threats. Historical records confirm Ivar's role in Dublin, where he co-ruled with Olaf the White before seizing full control. His reign laid the foundation for Dublin's growth as a Viking hub, but it was fraught with conflict. Let's analyze Ivar's strategy. His fortifications and trade policies show a ruler's foresight, but his reliance on fear strained alliances, sowing seeds of rebellion. From Finn's perspective, Ivar is a paradox, a tyrant who brings order, a cripple who wields godlike power. He is not human, Finn whispers, watching Ivar's men patrol the streets. As winter blankets Dublin, Ivar sits in his hall, maps spread before him. His conquests are vast, but his health is failing, his body racked by pain. Let's imagine his thoughts. I have built a kingdom, but will it stand? Or will my brothers, my enemies, tear it down? His paranoia deepens, a shadow over his victories. Ubbi, preparing to leave Dublin, looks back at the city and thinks, Ivar has won his crown, but he wears it alone. The brothers' bond, once unbreakable, is now a frayed thread. Brother Cillian, his chronicle nearly complete, writes, Ivar the Boneless has made Dublin a fortress, but no walls can shield a man from his own heart. As the snow falls, Ivar gazes out at the frozen harbor, his mind already plotting new conquests. But the cost of his ambition is mounting, and fate is not kind to those who defy it. Dublin is his, but the saga of Ivar the Boneless is far from over. Greater trials await, where betrayal and destiny will test the man who would be king. The wind howls across a barren heath, carrying the distant clang of steel and the cries of the dying. A blood-red sunset stains the sky, as if the gods themselves mourn the chaos unfolding below. We return to Ivar the Boneless, the Viking, whose name is now synonymous with terror and triumph. Yet, as he stands at the peak of his power, cracks begin to form not in his kingdom, but in his family, his body, and his soul. Picture a windswept camp on the edge of Scotland, 870 AD. Viking tents flap in the gale, their dragon banners snapping like whips. Ivar, carried on his shield, surveys his warriors, but his piercing eyes hide a growing unease. Dublin is his, a fortress of stone and ambition. But victory has not brought peace. Ivar's brothers Ube, Hvitserk, and the absent Bjorn grow restless, their loyalty strained by his unrelenting hunger for more. Imagine a young Viking, Eric, barely 16, sharpening his axe by a fire. He idolizes Ivar, whispering tales of the Boneless One's conquests, but even he senses the tension in the camp. "The brothers feud," he mutters, glancing at Ivar's tent. Let's step into Ivar's mind, his thoughts as jagged as the cliffs around him. "They call me king," he thinks, his knuckles whitening on his staff, but kings fall when trust falters. The Great Heathen Army, once a unified force, is fraying. Ubi dreams of peace, Hvitserk craves glory, and Ivar, haunted by his father's shadow, sees only conquest. Visualize a stormy night, rain lashing the camp. Inside Ivar's tent, lit by flickering torches, he faces Ube, his brother's face etched with frustration. The air crackles with unspoken grudges. "You've built an empire," Ube says, his voice low but firm. "But at what cost? We're Vikings, not tyrants." Ivar's smile is a blade. "You speak of cost, brother. Father paid with his life. I pay with my soul." This confrontation is a turning point. Ube, torn between loyalty and principle, storms out, leaving Ivar alone, his coughs echoing in the empty tent, a sign of his worsening health. Let's shift to a Saxon chronicler, Father Alfric, writing in a dimly lit monastery. "The pagan Ivar grows weaker," he scribes, his quill trembling with hope. "God may yet deliver us from his wrath." Alfric's words reflect England's fragile optimism. Ivar's raids continue, but rumors of his frailty spread, emboldening his enemies. Yet Ivar's mind remains his greatest weapon. Picture a rugged coastline where Ivar plans his next campaign. His men haul longships ashore, their oars creaking, while Ivar, propped on furs, studies a map of Strathclyde, a Scottish kingdom ripe for plunder. From Eric's perspective, Ivar is a god among men. He sees the future, Eric thinks, watching Ivar trace battle lines with a bony finger. Even the wind obeys him. But Ivar's body betrays him. Pain gnaws at his bones, each movement a battle. "I am not finished," he whispers to himself, defiance burning in his chest. Let's explore the historical context. The Great Heathen Army's campaigns in the late 860s targeted Scotland and Ireland, but internal divisions weakened their momentum. Ivar's role in these raids is murky, his death dated around 873 AD by some sources. Ivar's condition, likely osteogenesis imperfecta, explains his physical decline. His refusal to yield, however, mirrors the Viking ethos. Strength is will, not flesh. Now, visualize a battle on a mist-shrouded moor. Strathclyde's warriors, clad in leather and iron, form a shield wall, their war cries defiant. Ivar's Vikings advance, their raven banners snapping in the wind. Ivar, carried to a vantage point, orchestrates the assault. "Feign weakness," he orders, his voice hoarse. His men retreat, luring the Scots into a trap, a classic Ivar tactic. The mist thickens as the Scots charge, only to be flanked by Ivar's hidden reserves. Axes clash, blood soaks the earth, and Ivar watches, his face unreadable, though pain clouds his eyes. Let's imagine a Scottish warrior, Lachlan, fighting in the melee. To him, Ivar is a specter, a cripple who commands death itself. How does a broken man break kingdoms? Lachlan wonders, parrying a Viking's blow. The battle is a victory, but costly. Ivar's men cheer, but Eric notices their leader's pallor, his hands trembling as he grips his shield. He pushes too far, Eric thinks, fear creeping into his heart. Now picture the aftermath. The moor is a graveyard, bodies strewn like fallen leaves. Ivar, coughing violently, orders the survivors spared a rare mercy, or perhaps a calculated move to win loyalty. Ubbi, who fought reluctantly, approaches Ivar. "This cannot go on," he says, his voice heavy. Ivar's reply is cold. "Then leave, brother, I fight alone." This rift shatters the Great Heathen Army. Ubbe departs for Ireland, seeking a different path, while Hvitserk wavers, torn between Ivar's vision and his own doubts. Let's reflect on Ivar's psychology. His paranoia, once a spark, is now a blaze. Every ally is a potential traitor, every victory a fleeting shield against oblivion. From Father Alfric's perspective, Ivar's decline is divine justice. "The heathen's body fails, as all evil must," he writes. "Yet dread lingers, can a mind so cunning ever truly fall?" Now, imagine a quiet moment, far from battle. Ivar sits alone on a cliff, the sea crashing below, stars piercing the night sky. His breath is ragged, his body frail, but his mind races. "I have conquered kings," he thinks, "but who will remember Ivar when the sagas fade?" This fear of being forgotten drives him, even as death looms. Let's move to a final campaign, 872 AD, in a land of rugged hills, possibly Ireland or Scotland. Ivar, now visibly weakened, leads a raid against a fortified hill fort, determined to prove his strength. Picture the siege, catapults hurling stones, arrows darkening the sky. Ivar, carried through the chaos, directs his men with feverish intensity, his voice cutting through the din. "Break their walls, or we are nothing." The fort falls, but the cost is steep. Ivar collapses, blood flecking his lips, his men rushing to his side. Eric, fighting nearby, freezes, his hero suddenly mortal. Let's imagine Ivar's thoughts as he lies on the cold earth. "I built a legend, but legends die. Did I win or did I lose myself?" His defiance flickers, replaced by a rare vulnerability. Historical accounts of Ivar's death are vague. Some say he died in Dublin, others in battle, his body buried in an unmarked grave. The Annals of Ulster note his passing around 873, but the details are lost to time. From Lachlan's perspective, now a prisoner, Ivar's death is a relief, yet haunting. "He was no man," Lachlan whispers, "but a storm that swept us all away." Eric, mourning his leader, carves a rune in Ivar's honor. The boneless one lived as none dared, he thinks, vowing to carry Ivar's name forward. Let's analyze Ivar's tactics in these final years. His reliance on deception feigned retreats. Ambushes remained unmatched, but his failing health forced him to delegate, exposing his distrust of others. His psychological state was a paradox. A man who craved immortality, yet feared betrayal at every turn. His disability, once a spur, became a cage, amplifying his isolation. Picture a final scene. A Viking funeral. Ivar's body, if he died in battle, laid on a pyre, his shield at his side. The flames rise, and Eric watches, tears in his eyes, as the boneless one becomes ash. Father Alfric, learning of Ivar's death, writes, "The terror of the north is gone, but his shadow lingers, a warning to all who defy God." Ubbi in Ireland hears the news and bows his head. "You were my brother," he murmurs, "but you chose a lonely path." The rift never healed, a wound deeper than any blade. As the pyre's embers fade, Ivar's legend grows, carried by sagas and whispers. He was a conqueror, a strategist, a man who defied fate, but at what cost? The saga of Ivar the Boneless ends here, but his story is not yet complete. One final journey awaits, where his legacy will echo through time, teaching us lessons that endure. The fog lifts over a quiet Dublin morning, revealing a city that hums with life. Longships bob in the harbor, their dragon prows silent, as the legacy of a man who shaped this place echoes through time. We have followed Ivar the Boneless, from the blood-soaked fields of England to the fortified walls of Dublin, through triumphs and betrayals to his final mysterious end. Now we step beyond his life to explore the shadow. He cast a shadow that stretches across centuries. Picture a windswept hill in modern Ireland, 2025. An archaeologist, Dr. Fiona Connolly, kneels in the dirt, her trowel uncovering a Viking axe head, its iron pitted but unbroken. "This was Ivar's world," she whispers, her breath catching at the weight of history. Ivar's story is no longer just a saga. It is a lens through which we see the Viking Age, a time when men like him reshaped Europe with fire, steel, and unrelenting will. Imagine a small Scandinavian village where a young woman, Astrid, stands before a weathered runestone. Its runes speak of Ivar, her distant ancestor, a name both revered and feared. "What drove you?" she wonders, tracing the carved lines. Let's step into a sleek corporate office in London, where a strategist, Michael Chen, paces before a whiteboard. "Ivar's tactics," he tells his team, "show us how to outmaneuver competitors, anticipate, deceive, and strike." Ivar's cunning lives on, even here. The year is 873 AD, or perhaps a little later, when Ivar's death marked the end of an era. But his influence on trade, warfare, and culture rippled far beyond his grave, shaping the world we know today. Visualize Dublin's bustling streets in the 9th century, transformed under Ivar's rule. Stone walls rose, markets thrived, and Norse-Irish trade routes linked distant lands, from Byzantium to the Baltic. From Dr. Connolly's perspective, Ivar was a visionary. "He didn't just conquer," she says, brushing dirt from a coin stamped with Norse runes. "He built a hub that outlasted him, a testament to his foresight." Let's explore the historical context. The Viking Age, spanning the 8th to 11th centuries, was a crucible of change. Ivar's Dublin became a cornerstone of Norse power, its wealth fueling exploration and settlement across the Atlantic. Ivar's legacy is not just in stone or coin. His story, woven into sagas like the tale of Ragnar's sons, inspired generations of warriors, poets, and dreamers, each retelling adding to his myth. Picture a Viking reenactor, Lars, standing on a Norwegian fjord, his shield painted with a raven. "Ivar was more than a man," he says, his voice reverent. "He was a symbol proof that will can defy fate." But Ivar's legacy is complex. To the Irish, he was a tyrant, his taxes heavy, his justice brutal. To the Norse, he was a hero, a cripple who conquered kings. The truth lies in the tension between these views. Let's imagine Astrid's thoughts as she gazes at the runestone. You were my blood, she thinks, but your victories came at a cost. Did you ever know peace? Her pride is tinged with sorrow. Now, shift to a university lecture hall where a historian, Professor Eamon Walsh, addresses his students. Ivar's ruthlessness was his strength and his tragedy, he says, pointing to a map of Viking conquests. He won battles but lost his brothers. Ivar's rift with Ubbe and Hvitserk, as we saw, fractured the Great Heathen Army. His ambition, once a fire, became a cage, isolating him even as he built his empire. Let's reflect on Ivar's psychology. His disability, likely osteogenesis imperfecta, shaped a mind that thrived on control, turning weakness into a weapon. Yet his fear of being forgotten drove him to extremes, a universal human struggle. From Michael Chen's perspective, Ivar's story is a masterclass in strategy. He saw moves others didn't, Chen explains, sketching a flowchart. In business, like war, anticipation is power. Picture a quiet moment in Dr. Connolly's dig site, dusk settling over the Irish hills. She holds a Viking amulet, its Thor's hammer glinting in the fading light. Ivar's world feels alive here, she murmurs, connecting past to present. Let's step back to the 9th century, to a Dublin marketplace under Ivar's rule. Irish merchants barter with Norse traders, their voices a tapestry of languages. This fusion, born of Ivar's vision, laid roots for a multicultural Europe. But Ivar's legacy is not without stains. The annals of Ulster record his raids, the monasteries burned, the lives shattered. To monks like Brother Cillian from our earlier tales, Ivar was a scourge, his name a curse. Imagine a fictional descendant, Finn, an Irish teacher in modern Dublin. Standing by the River Liffey, he reflects, Ivar brought prosperity, but also pain. His story teaches us to weigh ambition against its human cost. Let's explore Ivar's cultural impact. Viking sagas, spread by skalds, carried his name across seas, inspiring tales of cunning and courage. Even today, TV shows and novels draw on his myth, reimagining the boneless one. Picture a film set where an actor portraying Ivar limps onto a recreated battlefield, his eyes blazing with intensity. He's a character you feel, the actor says, because his struggle is so human. Ivar's influence extends to modern strategy, from military tactics to corporate gamesmanship. His use of psychological warfare spreading fear, sowing discord foreshadowed modern propaganda and competitive disruption. From Professor Walsh's perspective, Ivar's legacy is a paradox. He was a product of his time, Walsh tells his students, but his ability to adapt, to turn limits into leverage, is timeless. Let's visualize a Viking festival in York, where reenactors clash in mock battles, their cheers echoing Ivar's war cries. A child, wide-eyed, asks, was Ivar a hero? The answer is never simple. Ivar's story challenges us to grapple with duality, genius and cruelty, strength and fragility. His life, etched in blood and stone, invites us to reflect on our own ambitions and their consequences. Now, let's draw lessons from Ivar's saga, lessons that resonate in our lives today. His journey, fraught with triumph and tragedy, offers wisdom for navigating our own battles. Lesson 1. Adversity as opportunity. Ivar's disability could have broken him, but he forged it into a crucible for innovation. His condition forced him to think differently, to see angles others missed. Imagine yourself facing a setback, a lost job, a failed project. Like Ivar, you can reframe it, asking, what unique perspective does this give me? His life teaches us that limits are not barriers but invitations to create. From Astrid's perspective, this lesson rings true. Ivar taught me resilience, she thinks, standing by the runestone. My struggles, like his, can fuel my strength. Lesson 2. The cost of isolation. Ivar's ruthlessness won him kingdoms but lost him his brothers. His paranoia, born of necessity, became a prison, a reminder that no victory is complete without connection. Picture a modern leader, driven like Ivar, alienating their team in pursuit of success. Finn, our Irish teacher, reflects. Ivar's story warns us ambition must not blind us to those we love. This lesson applies to us all. In our careers, our relationships, we must balance drive with empathy, lest we, like Ivar, stand alone atop our achievements. Lesson 3. Strategic vision. Ivar's genius lay in his foresight, his ability to anticipate enemies' moves and turn their strengths against them. His feigned retreats, his psychological ploys, were chess moves in a brutal game. Michael Chen, in his office, lives this lesson. Ivar's planning, he says, shows us how to stay 3 steps ahead, whether in business or life. Strategy, not strength, often decides the outcome. Imagine applying this to your own challenges, planning a career move, navigating a conflict. Ivar's life urges us to think long-term, to see the board before we play. Let's pause to consider the evidence. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle and Annals of Ulster confirm Ivar's conquests, his role in Dublin's rise, and his death around 873 AD. Archaeological finds, runestones, coins, fortifications bear witness to his impact. Yet, the sagas exaggerate, painting Ivar as larger than life. The Blood Eagle, the Boneless moniker, these may be myths, but they reflect a truth. Ivar was a man who bent reality to his will. From Dr. Connolly's perspective, this duality is key. Ivar was human, she says, holding the Viking axe head, but his ability to shape history makes him eternal. Picture a final scene. A stormy night in modern Dublin, rain streaking the city's lights. Finn, standing by a Viking monument, speaks to his students. Ivar's story is ours to learn from, to question, to carry forward. The wind carries his words, as if Ivar himself listens, his spirit woven into the fabric of time. His saga ends, but its lessons endure, guiding us through our own battles. As the stars emerge, piercing the storm clouds, we leave Ivar the Boneless not as a myth, but as a mirror, reflecting the triumphs and costs of a life lived without limits.